Hi, I'm Phil Richards. We're at Juno's remote Idea Lab studios today, and we're going to talk about our IC22R. This is the remodeled version of our popular IC22 fixture. And it actually is intended to be used perhaps after a construction project where maybe you decide that you want to add another housing to your ceiling, or of course you could approach it as a completely new project. The long and short of it is we cut a hole up in the ceiling and we put the junction box through and push that right up through the hole and then fasten the clips. Now let's get into a little bit of the details here. This is our template that allows you to trace the hole on the ceiling. And you might notice that I've got little hash marks here at 12, 3, 6, and 9 o'clock, as well as a center drill hole. And you can mark that with a pencil and know to go back with your hole saw for your pilot bit. That would be your position for your pilot bit. And of course, the hash marks on there would allow you to align this with a laser with other products that might already be installed on the ceiling. So let's take a look at the interior. One of the first things that you're going to notice is that blue plastic plug that's in the socket, and that's our socket overspray protector. Often on new construction jobs or even remodel type situations, folks will come along with airless spray guns to paint the ceilings white, and that basically prevents the interior of the socket from getting all coated up with white paint. So after installing the product, we merely reach in and grab that blue plastic by the little handle there, pull that out, and we have a nice clean socket to screw the lamp into. Underneath that overspray protector is our nickel-plated copper screw shell. And you might wonder what the significance of a nickel-plated copper screw shell is, but I think most of us have had the experience of unscrewing a lamp from a fixture, and we get the bulb in our hand, and then we realize that the socket threads are still up inside the fixture. So with the nickel-plated copper screw shell, we always get a very nice clean release, even from a lamp that's old and has been up in the fixture for a very long time. The next thing that we'll take a look at is the mounting clips, or the spring retention clips that actually hold this into place. So you can see we have 3 of them, and once the product has been inserted up through the hole, we can take those clips from the inside and push them out. And the next, and you can see that those are actually designed to attach the housing by sandwiching that drywall in between that plaster flange and that spring leg that comes out. And I want to show you one other thing about these. After the product has been installed, if you need to remove it or get back up into the ceiling again, there's a very small little tab. I call it a tongue here, right in the middle of that little U-shaped cutout. If you can get up under that tongue with a needle nose pliers, thusly, and sort of push that up, that will release the tension on that spring, and then you can bring that housing down back through the ceiling if you need to get back up into the ceiling or check your wiring. So unlike the standard position in which the product is shipped, this will take us up to a 1 1/8 inch thick ceiling. If I move the clip up to the second set of punch outs in the housing, we can accommodate a ceiling up to 1 3/4 inches deep. Going back to the interior, you can see that the socket is actually attached to a movable plate that is attached to the inside of the housing with 2 wing nuts. I can loosen and tighten those wing nuts to raise and lower the socket plate to maybe accommodate different size lamps or have the lamp hanging at a different depth relative to the particular trim we're using. Right now, what we're going to do is we'll show you it going into an ultra trim. I'm going to loosen that socket with a Phillips screwdriver. Just 1 screw is all it takes. Twist that out. You can see I can pull that down on the leads, and the leads will allow me to snap that into the back of this ultra trim. Before I do that, I'm going to push that socket plate all the way up to the top of the housing. And so I'm going to loosen those wing nuts. And next I'll take a flat-bladed screwdriver to get kind of up and under the little legs, that socket plate. There's one. There's the second one. There we go, and you can see I'm all the way up now with the socket hanging free from the leads. Next, I'll take my Ultra Trim, and you can see on the there's some little instructions there. Actually, you can't miss them, and it says insert spring socket tab into the smaller slot first. So you can see there's a deeper slot and a smaller slot. It's very important, otherwise it really isn't going to go in. The torsion springs are made to fasten directly to these little C-clamps inside of the housing. Some folks call them bullhorns, and they're going to pull that right up to the ceiling line and make it nice and tight. So there you can see what a completed installation would look like. Now let's take a look at a wet location shower light. So this product comes actually in two pieces. This is kind of a reflector. It's a combination reflector and kind of a heat deflector that's going to go into that housing first. And I'm going to line up these slots with those C-clamps. And after that's installed, you can see that those leaf springs kind of push against the sides and hold it in place. Then I will take the finished trim piece and feed those springs right up through those slots. First, let's connect the socket. No large slot and small one here. There's my socket going in nice and firm, and I'll align those little slots there with those C-clamps as I push it in. Now you can see how the slots in that reflector are lined up with those C-clamps, giving me a nice travel path for those springs to go up in. Next, we'll squeeze the springs and insert those into the slots that we just showed you. And of course, if this were a real installation, we'd have a lamp in there. And there you have your wet location shower light. So we've showed you the downlight, the wet location, and of course we call this an eyeball trim. This is typically used to light artwork. So when I can rotate it, I can aim it to focus on a picture on the wall, or maybe a task area, or light a potted plant. And this one's pretty easy. I'm merely going to squeeze those springs, snap it into those slots, squeeze the torsion springs, and get them into those C-clamp grabbers. And there you can see my eyeball trim. Next, we'll look at another downlight trim. And this, of course, is our white baffle, very popular piece. And we're going to start over again with the socket attached to the plate in its typical out-of-the-box position. And this one is pretty easy. In order to attach this one, your hand has to actually come up through the aperture and hook that spring into a little loop or a slot in the back of the socket plate. Now, if you're a big guy and you have big hands, sometimes it's a lot easier to actually reach up through there with a needle nose, and I usually grab that loop, and it allows me to get a little bit farther up in there, and there's enough room in there where you can actually see past your hand and see that you're hooking that. So I'll just grab the loop on that spring, hook in one side, hook in the other side, and there you can see our white baffle trim. Very popular downlight trim. Next, let's talk about the installation features. Before I move over to my ceiling, I'm going to prepare my junction box by knocking a knockout out, and I'll use my flat-bladed screwdriver to kind of wiggle that knockout back and forth. And here I'll pop my junction box cover open, and you can see, as is typical, my black, my white, and my green wires. And let's walk over here to our hole that's been cut with our template. And I've got power up here. Naturally, my hole is pre-cut and my power has been shut off at the circuit breaker box. And let's begin installing. And I'll feed my wires through that knockout. And I'll spin that lock nut on, tighten it up, and then use my wire nuts to attach my green to my green, my white to my white, and my black to my black. Having made my wire connections, now I'll replace the junction box cover. And I can push that all up through the hole. Of course, it stops at the ceiling where that flange hits. And next I'll attach my spring clips. Pushing those in, listen for the snap, because if you don't hear the snap, it's not attached. And there you have it. Those are the mechanical and installation features of the Juno IC22R 6-inch remodel housing. I'm Phil Richards for Juno Lighting Group, and remember, it's all in the lighting.